I'm Daniel Levine, and this is the Bio Report. IBM's Watson Group recently announced an investment in Pathway Genomics, part of a $100 million initiative by the computing giant to spur innovation in entrepreneurial companies that seek to leverage its cognitive computing platform, Watson. Pathway Genomics will develop an app that will use Watson to provide health and wellness guidance customized to a user's genetics. We spoke to Lauri Saft, director of IBM Watson Partner Programs, about the agreement, the things Watson can do better than doctors, and how this cognitive wonder promises to transform healthcare. Lauri, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Dan. Nice to be here.
IBM Watson Group just announced an investment in the clinical genetics testing company Pathway Genomics to develop a consumer app that will provide health and wellness guidance customized to a person's own genetics using IBM's Watson. Perhaps we can begin with Watson itself, which gained some notoriety through its performance on Jeopardy several years ago. But for the benefit of our listeners, can you describe Watson and tell us how it fits into the world of healthcare?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. It's a great way to start the discussion. And again, thanks for having me here today. So let me describe Watson very briefly, which is, what most people saw was this public display of the technology when we had, the Jeopardy championship. And all that really was is a chance to show the world that this could actually have sort of practical use in the world. And it does three things very well. So it understands the nuances of natural language. So the way that we're talking today, it breaks sentences down into the component parts and understands the context of what a user may be asking. So that's part one. Part two is it consumes mountains of data and mountains of unstructured content. And in the case of Jeopardy, it was reading 200 million pages in just 3 seconds. So Watson devours all of this information, this unstructured content that frankly we're all drowning in today, and it makes its way through that content to go look for candidate answers for the question that was asked. And then finally, which is really sort of where the power comes in, it brings back those answers in the form of evidence or a passage of evidence from the content, and it scores it. So it says, I believe this is an answer to your question, and I have a 90% confidence level that this is the answer, and here's why I believe that. But here are other candidate answers that I can provide back to you at the same time. So it does those three things, which is, incredibly powerful in combination. And you can start to imagine, to your second part of the question, which is how is this affecting healthcare? You can start to imagine how, mining through the massive amounts of content in the medical world, both for the physicians, for the patients, for the clinicians, how powerful that can be when we're putting that information at the fingertips of these professionals or the patients.
Well, we are in this era of explosive data in healthcare that ranges from electronic health records to real-time health tracking of data captured on smartphones. Wasn't the period of transformation of healthcare in part driven by our growing ability to capture different types of data that have been all around us and now we're integrating? How do you see this world of data reshaping healthcare, and how do you see healthcare being transformed?
Yeah, so I think on several fronts, healthcare is going to be transformed through getting access to, again, all of this unstructured information. So if we think about the amount of medical research that's being done, coming out in the forms of medical journals, blogs, etc. If we think about a doctor and the work that they do, even in the notes that they're taking about their patients or how those patients are responding to certain medicines, and how powerful that kind of information could be used. And then certainly in the field of discovery, so as pharmaceutical companies are looking for new drug compounds, and certainly, back to our discussion about genetics, how do those drug compounds interact with unique genetic differentiators? All of these these are ways that we can now get access to this information, get insights out of the information and help the professionals that are doing this work.
Well, there's certainly a case to be made for systems like Watson that can do things that doctors simply cannot, or at least not as well. What is the promise of a system like Watson? What can Watson do well that might tax the capabilities of a typical doctor?
Yeah, and this is one of the most powerful things we heard very early on as we were doing some work with Memorial Sloan Kettering and Cleveland Clinic. Frankly, these doctors were referring to Watson as their colleague. And the reason for that is, Watson was able to take on board so much of the new information that, frankly, the doctors just can't get to. It's coming so fast at them. And, they spend their days with patients, certainly with their colleagues, trying to sort of understand what's new in their field of endeavor. So the fact that Watson can be an assistant and a colleague in this sense has really been helpful for certainly those doctors and doing something for them that before they weren't able to tackle on their own.
Well, the investment in Pathway is part of a broader initiative by IBM Watson to invest $100 million to drive innovation in entrepreneurial organizations ranging from startups and VC-backed companies to established players and leverage the capabilities of Watson in new ways. Have there been other investments to date, and what are the range of things you're looking to do?
Yeah, yes, in fact, so this is our third investment in the portfolio, and again, you mentioned we have this $100 million fund where we invest in companies that are a bit more mature, so not necessarily seed stage, but potentially BC rounds of funding. We will deploy that funding to all different sorts of partners based on the various kind of transformations that they're pursuing that are making use of the cognitive services. So our first investments were in companies that were using what we call the question and answer API. Again, what you saw in Jeopardy. And those minority investments were important for us because, we wanted to be able to show that IBM is working with them over the long term as they build their businesses on top of cognitive. But what we'll start to see is new partners who are using some of the new services we've announced, whether it's psychographic profiling, message resonance, or other sort of content curation tools. We will continue to invest in companies that are using the other elements of our cognitive portfolio going forward.
Well, let's talk about Pathway Panorama, the app that's being developed by Pathway Genomics that will use the abilities of Watson to offer personalized health and wellness guidance. How do you envision that app being used? What exactly will it do?
Yeah, it's really exciting for this world of sort of personalized medicine, right? And the way I like to think about it is, at the heart of it all, what matters to me, the medicine I take, my healthcare plan, and ultimately, how I sort of conduct myself in a day-to-day life has a lot to do with my own personal genetic makeup. So the ability to use Panorama then to not only know my personal genetic profile, but then what are the implications for the medicines that I take and how they'll be metabolized based on my profile? What kind of health activities should I engage in or not engage in, frankly, based on, again, my genetic makeup? Things like, should I take more vitamin D? Should I drink a third cup of coffee today, right? There are things that are going to be different for me than for you, based on our own profiles. So Panorama can start to handle these types of questions as we want to interact with our own personal health record. If we think about kind of the next iteration of this, and we look at the other data sources, again, personalized to us as patients, as individuals, bringing in your electronic medical records information or data coming off of your Fitbits. So how does that all come together to allow me to interact with that data and then interact with it in a way that it's answering questions based on my personal profile?
So you mentioned earlier one of the powers of Watson is its ability to understand human language. How will people input questions to the app, and how proactive will the app be in providing information to the user?
Yeah, great question. So there are a set of pre-populated questions that the app is providing today. So just to get users started on the types of things that they might want to ask and, to kind of begin them on the journey. But there is a free-form text field as well, which gets to this idea of, Watson being able to understand the question in natural language terms. So there's an open text field that I can ask any question as well and allow, Watson and Panorama to answer those questions.
You mentioned that the idea here is to make use of an individual's genomic information to customize the guidance that the app will provide. We're learning a lot about the role genes play in our health and wellness, but this is still early days. How limited are we by our lack of understanding, and to what extent will the app be able to use other health information about an individual to customize recommendations?
Yeah, so I think the content that will begin to feed this we haven't tackled in entirety yet. We do work with the Pathway Genomics, the genetic counselors who are creating new content every day, again around how some of these drugs may interact with the genetic information. So I think the content sources will continue to build over time, and that will only make this a more powerful experience for the users.
Is the idea here, though, to take into account other barometric information, monitoring information that a smartphone might pick up on a user?
Well, yes, and absolutely. And what Pathway has begun to talk about again is some of this sort of personal health and wellness information that comes off of all of these devices that are monitoring our every move, whether it's, related to the exercise we're doing, the food we're eating, or even the sleep we're getting at night. So we'll start to use a lot of that information to feed this and again, enrich the experience. And by the way, we will continue, to your point about the fund and the investments that we're making in partners, we'll continue to bring other partners into the mix that, there'll be synergies between these applications and between the content sources.
How do you envision the app interacting with the user's physician? Will it capture or provide any information that a doctor can use, and will patients be better armed with information than their doctors?
Well, yeah, so very specifically, it will all be using the same platform. So, we referred to the electronic medical records that both the patients and the doctors have access to, and then feeding in this genetic information from Pathway that will, again, sort of go inform the doctor. It will inform the application on the same platform, and ultimately then as these information sources come together, help inform the patient as well. So, we do still need the expertise of the doctor in the mix, so the application can't handle all of this, but certainly being able to kind of bring these many information sources and data points together will help that doctor at that point of care.
Well, we are in this remarkable time where individuals have access to so much information about health and wellness. How do you see this changing the doctor-patient relationship? Is it going to change the role of the doctor? Will there be more of a talk of doctors becoming health coaches as opposed to all-powerful experts?
Yeah, I love that terminology, actually, health coaches. So it certainly does begin to democratize medicine, but, certainly for the patient who has access to so much more information than they ever had before and can sort of inform the conversations that they'll be having with the doctor. So that's certainly powerful. But also this idea that, it is up to each individual to care for themselves at home as well, right? So what is it that they're doing in their day-to-day life to stay well, not just be treated when they're in the doctor and they have a sickness. So I think it will continue to help all of us in our day-to-day lives as we seek medical treatment, but also live our lives in ways that are healthy and fit.
So we're dealing with an area of, depending on your point of view, rapidly or slowly evolving regulation. Do you expect to seek regulatory approval for the app? And if not, how will that limit what you seek to do with it?
Yeah, no, in fact, this does not need regulatory approval. So, just based on the way the information is presented and where it's captured, it will not need regulatory approval.
So in some ways, does the decision not to seek regulatory approval limit the types of things that you will do with it? I mean, it suggests that you're capable of doing much more than you might actually try to do.
Well, I guess I would say this, that, the information platforms that this will sit on top of will still be able to capture regulated data like in the medical records, but it is not a tool for diagnosis. And because of this, it does not have to sort of go through normal regulatory channels. But there will be capabilities that are brought into the data fields that come from regulated bodies of data, but not presented in this application.
So as we're moving into this era of evidence-based medicine, of preventive care, of personalized medicine, where is it that Watson can have the biggest impact? Is it going to be with patients or is it going to be with providers?
I think across the spectrum, which is really what's so exciting about what we're seeing in the ecosystem, the types of use cases and partners that are coming forward span anything from, what we've seen with health and wellness applications, certainly a lot of the work that we've done in the genetics field. We're doing quite a bit now with clinical trials matching. So how can we match patients to specific trials that are going on to help them, treat unique diseases, all the way to, again, the doctors at the point of care, when they're treating the patients. So I think what's exciting is this will be able to transform almost every dimension of that value chain, and it's going to be exciting to see it get much more pervasive.
Lauri Saft, Director of the IBM Watson Partner Program. Lauri, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Dan. This has been fun.
Thanks for listening. The Bio Report is a production of the Levine Media Group. To automatically download this podcast each week, subscribe to our RSS feed or through iTunes or other podcast manager. To join our mailing list, go to levinemediagroup.com. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to drop us a line or are interested in sponsoring this podcast, send email to danny@levinemediagroup.com. Special thanks to Jonah Levine, who composed our theme music, and the Jonah Levine Collective, which performs it.